Berberi. I'm so sorry about the syllabic enunciations, Albana, please forgive me. I'm excited for multiple reasons. First of all, Albana was with us from the very beginning in FishCAST. She's seen us through thick and thin, but not only has she been a witness to all of this and how we've evolved over the time, Albana was very much involved in FishCAST as well. You basically came up with your own panel for a conference session at FishCAST. You invited folks to do a panel all about the challenges in terms of entering the aquatic sciences and opportunities and how things have changed. And it was really impactful. And it really was just, it set us on a course for opening it up to wider mentorship. And again, it was just always, you were on the FishCAST committees as well. And so, and you'd always write back to Kendra and me about how you spent some time during your PhD, possible postdoc. You went overseas. It was just always so exciting. You always kept us in the loop with everything you were doing, and we could claim you like, oh, Albana's successes are FishCAST successes, but really, no, not at all. You know, we played a very, very small role, and it was just so amazing to see your growth happening. But I don't want to talk too much because Steve's here and he has a lot more in-depth things to say. But I just wanted to give you such a heartfelt thank you for your involvement in FishCAST, and you're still contributing after the fact as well, to come back and do this alumni series, and we can see how it's gone, where you are now, and potentially inspire others. And I really did learn a lot from you, Albana, and I really appreciate it. So welcome, and please don't forget about us and keep keeping us in touch. And with that, Steve, if you don't mind, if you'd like to just say a couple of words before starting.
Yeah, I'm going to say a few words, and then Reagan's going to do the formal intro.
Right.
Albana helped make it TurtleCast instead of FishCAST. I remember when Albana wrote her application. The Romita committee, not surprisingly, had a few questions, and so we had to do a good job of connecting the dots there. So thanks to everybody for thinking big and broad in terms of these aquatic systems. What I love is even what Albana is doing right now. She's working with Canadian Science Publishers, which is part of our community, right? We've worked with them, collaborated with them, partnered with them, and I think how they approach what they do is very similar to how FishCAST approach things, creating space for lots of voices, lots of training and development opportunities, centering early career folks, and so on. So I love that Albana, and this is the same organization where Jess Reed is also working as well. So I love that. And I just want to also acknowledge that Albana did such a good job of, again, a COVID student, as most of folks are, turning lemons into lemonade, and also really creating opportunities. So the MyTax that she did when she went over to Oxford, that was her. She developed those relationships and made that happen, and that's very different than the other MyTax that I've had, where it's a close colleague and sort of connect the dots, and it's kind of a done deal. This was something that she developed from the bottom up. So well done. Thrilled to see you soaring, and Bonnie's got a bunch of postdoc applications in now, so keen to see what she does next. So yeah.
And then I'll do the more formal one, although most of them I think have been touched on. But so Albana, she recently graduated from her PhD at Carleton University, and she was supervised by Vivian and Steve. She was supported by the NSER Create program FishCAST. She researched human freshwater turtle interactions in Ontario recreational fisheries, exploring both the ecological and social dimensions of these interactions. During her PhD, Albana also interned as an aquatic researcher at the Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources and at the University of Oxford's Interdisciplinary Centre for Conservation Science, with additional support from the MyTax Global Link Research Award. Before her PhD, Albana completed a Master's of Science in Environmental Sustainability at the University of Ottawa and a Bachelor's of Science Honors in Behavioral Cognition and Neuroscience at the University of Windsor. Today, Albana works with Canadian Science Publishing, overseeing the success of environmental journals. She has learned on throughout her academic career, and I'll say Albana she has been one of the best mentors I think that we've had in our lab. She really fosters a great lab community, and I think we miss you a lot here, but we're really happy for you. So yeah, excited to see what you present today, and yeah.
You guys, that's so nice. What the heck? That's so sweet of all of you. I'll let me attempt to share my screen. Give me 1 second. I'm also joining from my work laptop because I think the camera is better. But everyone at work is excited that I'm doing this FishCAST seminar right now. Okay, hopefully you can see my screen.
Looks great.
Okay, perfect. This work. Oh, it does. Okay. So I just want to say hello again, everybody. And that was such a sweet introduction. And I miss FishCAST and I miss being in CTTC. And I just wanted to do this sort of alumni seminar focusing on the experiences around my research because those experiences are very important. It helped build me as a researcher and as a person. And I think these are experiences that people are going through right now. So hopefully you hear something that's validating. Hopefully you hear some advice that's helpful as I go through this. And I also want to say that I'm joining in today from Ottawa, Ontario, which is the unceded and unsurrendered territories of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people, the city that I moved to for my graduate degrees and that I've called home for the past 7-ish years. But before I sort of get into things, I think it's really important to talk about my roots. It's as an introduction to people who don't know me that I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, but also because I believe our roots can guide us and influence the decisions that we've made to be here today. So I'm from Windsor, Ontario, which is the headquarters of FishCAST. It's the southern point of Ontario. It's the traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy of First Nations, which includes the Ojibwa, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi. I was raised by two incredible parents, both refugee status immigrants who had never had the opportunity to pursue an education beyond high school, which is a common Canadian first-generation story, and especially so in my hometown, which was predominantly working-class first- and second-generation households, which made me feel more seen and understood in an experience that can sometimes feel isolating. I also recently completed my PhD, focused on environmental conservation, and I wish I could say I was inspired to pursue it from all of the outdoor recreation activities I did growing up, like my lab peers did. But honestly, that was never really what we did as a family. We never went camping and fishing. And these are experiences that I did more so in my 20s when I already knew what I wanted to do for my post-grad degree. But instead, growing up for me, our family holidays involved long road trips to visit many of our cousins. My type of outdoor activity was playing basketball and soccer, like very urban activities, riding my bike around the neighborhood and all that stuff. But as a kid, I've always, cared about the environment and was curious about animals. And you can ask my friends and family growing up, like I'd always get a book at the library based off of animals. I had a little sticker collection of international animals and just loved it so much. And as a kid, you just think everybody is the same weird as you, but it turns out that not everybody was into nature and animals as much as me. So it was something I didn't really learn about until my bachelor's at U Windsor. So I did a bachelor's degree in behavior cognition and neuroscience, and this was my first exposure to interdisciplinary sciences. It was a mix between biology and psychology, but it was also my first exposure to ecology, animal behavior and evolution and environmental sciences. And two of my profs in my undergrad are here today, which is a fun full circle moment. And I just realized, like during the end of my undergraduate degree, that I could actually pursue school in this space and a potential career in environmental science and protecting nature, which is something really cool that I hadn't noticed before growing up or hadn't seen before growing up. So then I moved to Ottawa for my master's in environmental sustainability, and my program rocked. It was like a mix between environmental science, but also economics and law and policy. internships like what we do in FishCAST outside of academia to get to experience working in the government and in ENGOs, which I found super valuable. Learning new type of research skills like how to conduct policy analyses or how to do comparative law analyses, working with WWF and other NGOs to really have an impact in this field and writing policy briefs for the government and so much more. So I really loved this program, but what I really loved about it was the research aspect of things and getting to explore the breadth of research for environmental sustainability. And then I was kind of confused with what I wanted to do. So I decided to take a bit of a gap year to explore sorry, my slides aren't moving. There we go. I wanted to explore a bit about what it is, where do I fit in the research space? And that kind of led me to the Canadian Centre for Evidence-Informed Conservation at Carleton University, where I got to learn about synthesizing different types of evidence to understand these larger environmental issues and understand what the knowledge gaps were and work with people outside of academia, building those relationships and really seeing what it takes to do research that has impact. And at the same time, living in the capital of Canada really ignited my environmental advocacy. I started volunteering for local environmental organizations. I learned about the different facets of what impact can mean to different people and how to be more inclusive in this space. And so I've learned along the way all these things that I can do and all these things that I actually enjoy doing, like working in the interdisciplinary space, protecting our environment, working towards advocacy and inclusivity, having impact, learning about research, collaborating. And with that, I just figured, I think the next right choice for me is to do a PhD. And I was at Carleton. And while I was working there, there was, the beginnings of an idea to do a research project looking at human-turtle interactions in Ontario recreational fisheries. And I won't get too into the details of my projects and the findings and all that. I do love to talk about it, but I, again, wanted to focus on my experiences around these projects. And this PhD was a good fit for me because it was so interdisciplinary and I got to learn about the ecological side of things, but also the social science side of things and learn about collecting different types of data, the ethics involved, the analyses, publishing in different fields, the obstacles that come with working in an interdisciplinary space to this extent, and so much more. And again, I won't go into our study findings, but for today's seminar, I really had a moment to reflect about what were the main takeaways from my PhD experience, because it is a long time. And there was some advice that was given to me that was super helpful looking back, and some advice that I wish I had. So I'd like to go into 4 main takeaways that I've had for my PhD, and hopefully it helps to validate some people's experiences or people can learn from them. So the first one I have is the importance of building communities and showing up. And I think people at CTTC know that I really advocated for this in CTTC back at Carleton, but your PhD, if you choose to do a PhD, is a really long time. And cultivating these meaningful relationships with your lab mates, with your classmates, with your mentors, your project partners, their project partners, people that inspire you makes a huge difference in your journey. And I was given this advice very early on in my PhD and during COVID times too. It's just whenever possible, show up to those Zoom meetings, make Zoom meetings to bring people together. It makes a bigger difference than if you were to just focus in on your own projects for your whole degree. So going to those conferences, those departmental seminars, those study groups, going to lab makes a difference. It also helps with your imposter syndrome too, just sitting in a room that you thought you might not have been welcomed in and realizing that people there are actually very eager to hear what you have to say, what you have to bring to those conversations as a researcher and a collaborator and as a person. And we also know that, building networks is super helpful to open doors for collaborations and opportunities. But for me, building these networks and communities help me stay grounded in my PhD and help me feel supported and help me actually complete my degree. So I would definitely advise people to just show up and to make those relationships that will last longer than what you think. Another main thing that I got from my experience in my PhD and the FishCAST program is just, seeking opportunities and just doing things that are maybe not in the path that was, started before you, but exploring all different ways that you can make your own path in your graduate experience. And advocating for yourself, which was advice that my supervisors gave me early on in my degree, and it was super helpful throughout my degree and still is today. And so, as Tina was mentioning earlier, we had this really successful panel and workshop at the inaugural conference for the Society of Canadian Aquatic Sciences. It was this large multidisciplinary panel with panelists from different careers and different stages of their careers, all talking about their experiences in aquatic sciences and where we need to go in this field, and also how we can be more inclusive and show up for each other. I had never done anything like this before, so I didn't know what to expect. FishCAST has never done anything like this before, so they didn't know what to expect. Pretty much everybody that was involved was new to this, and I think it really shows, if you take big risks, you can get really big rewards. And I think this set big precedents for FishCAST and favoring sort of non-traditional sessions for conferences, because it turned out to be a really big, a popular event, but also impactful event. And this was a blog post that we posted in Canadian Science Publishing. And then that later on led to a bunch of different opportunities with FishCAST. FishCAST has been a huge part of my degree, but also, again, having that relationship has helped me as a person, to grow as a person as well. So we had this huge social dimensions day at FishCAST at Hamilton in February, where people who worked in social dimensions would come in and they would give a lightning talk, and that ignited discussions with a community that we didn't know we had before. And in parallel, we have this FishCAST Social Dimensions Working Group where people can join and learn about different facets of social dimensions. And just having that space for people was super impactful for them. And it was an area that I wish I had going into my degree, but I'm glad that that community has started and is continuing to grow in FishCAST. And then I also wanted to point out that FishCAST has internship opportunities. And even though a large chunk of my degree was during COVID, I still did an internship with the Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources early on. It was all online, but I showed up to those meetings. I had mentorship with someone who worked in the OMNR. I worked on my first thesis chapter with them, which has been published, which is fantastic. And that sort of ignited my thought of, what else is out there outside of Ottawa? How are other people doing environmental conservation and aquatic sciences? And then I just decided to apply for a MyTax, which if people are interested in doing research abroad, I would highly recommend looking into MyTax Global Research Award to support that. I kind of just thought, why not for a lot of things? And the worst people can say is no, which is honestly not that bad. So I reached out to the University of Oxford. There's a really cool group there, the Interdisciplinary Center for Conservation Science, which does work similar to what we were doing in Ottawa, but also similar to where I wanted to go in the future, which is looking at a more international side of environmental conservation. And they said yes, and I got the award, and one thing led to another, and we worked on these really cool guidelines for Indigenous and local communities around the world to lead monitoring initiatives within their own communities. And we recently published our first guide on community-based monitoring of river health and biodiversity for areas that have low access to resources and expertise, so communities can lead their own monitoring programs, which is really cool. And this experience was, I can go on and on about how impactful it was to me, but just something that was not in the path for me. I didn't see anybody else doing this from scratch, and I just decided to try it out, and it worked out, and I'm glad I did. So another main reflection for me was building communication skills as a lifelong asset, whether it's learning to communicate clearly with your supervisors about progress and challenges, or exchanging constructive feedback respectfully and effectively, and developing strong collaboration habits across disciplines and teams, or a skill for communication to strengthen both academic and non-academic careers. And something that I've noticed when, in this job that I have now, communication in all different types of aspects is super important, whether it's just the casual communication that you have with your teammates, but also with your collaborators for projects and all that. I also learned during my PhD and kept relearning, and I keep relearning about the different communication styles for research dissemination. You know, you have papers that you author during your degree and after your degree, which is in its own a different type of communication if you're publishing in different fields. But also there's evidence briefs for the government. You can also do, like we did for FishCAST, a panel where you can disseminate knowledge based off the different project partners that were involved in a project. So for example, during my PhD experience, I worked at Agriculture Canada for a few years, part-time, and that led to this huge project on how farmers can lead innovations for climate resiliency, which led to publications and evidence briefs and facilitating a panel at COP15 a couple of years ago. And it really showed the extent of how we can communicate what we are generating in terms of research and knowledge to different avenues and audiences. And this is my last point of reflection, but it's kind of a big one and one that I'm facing now. But growing in your field means allowing your path to evolve, which is something that I've learned throughout my degree, but also that I'm learning in a different way after my degree. At least for me, as much as I like to explore, all the different opportunities that came with my PhD outside of my own research project, I still found it hard to allow myself to be flexible and evolve beyond what I was trained for. So I think, as we keep training to be an expert in these niche fields in our degrees, it's also important to consider, what else it is that you like, and that you are a person and your priorities and your curiosity changes throughout. And so you should be flexible towards them. I think one aspect to consider is, how competitive academia can be. And it can feel, if you take a step out of academia, you might be too scared to jump back in, or you might feel like you're left behind. But what I found during my gap year and what I'm finding now is the things that I'm learning outside of academia make me a much stronger researcher. So anyways, some reflection that I've had during my degree and became very rampant at the end of my degree was, have my research interests changed? And that's sort of a surface level question that you tend to ask yourself after you finish this really big research project. And then from there, you can ask yourself, have your perspectives changed? And whether that's your perspectives from the knowledge that you've gained during your degree, or your worldview changes, or whatever it may be. And then asking yourself, are your priorities in life changing? And are your values changing? And how does that look like in terms of, what you want to pursue as a career moving forward? And these are all super daunting questions to ask yourself, and super easy to, ignore these questions or ignore the answers. But once you sit down and sort of work through what it is that you want out of your own career and out of your own life at this stage, I find it can be very liberating. So it's, there is light at the end of the tunnel, and just allowing yourself to change, whether that's in your careers or your priorities in life, it makes a huge difference to give yourself that space to evolve. And depending on where you are in your schooling, you might have realized that our graduate programs are kind of different in that they don't train us for a specific job. You can get a job in academia or the government or in the NGO, consulting. You can open a bakery. You have so many options with all the skills that you've gained during your degree. And I am super confident that whatever you decide to choose, you'll do really well in them, regardless. So for me, my sort of next step after my degree was publishing. And so I'm currently working in Canadian Science Publishing. It is a nonprofit publisher, for those who don't know. It is Canada's largest publisher for international scientific journals. And in my role, I oversee environmental journals, some of which have helped me during my degree and that I've published in, like environmental reviews in the Canadian Journal of Fisheries and Aquatic Sciences. And I work really closely with the editorial boards, consisting of experts in the fields who, I've had the pleasure of meeting throughout my degrees, but also others that I have not met before and would not have had it not been through Canadian Science Publishing, and getting to learn about all the cool different type of research involved in aquatic sciences and beyond. And I also work with society partners like FishCAST and like the Canadian Centre for Evidence-Informed Conservation, which I worked at during my gap year. And it's been, it feels like a coming home experience, being able to continue those relationships that you've built for many years, and continue to do things like facilitate and moderate webinars, which I did the other week with FishCAST on charting the future of Canadian aquatic sciences. And I'm learning a lot about what it is working in a nonprofit. That's a skill set on its own. So that's an experience that I've always wanted to do, because I feel like it aligns with my values in environmental conservation and just, my personal values as well. And so it's been very rewarding working at CSP in an area that, teamwork is supported for impact, and people are passionate about the work that they do, respecting work-life balance, working in a group that encourages that and reflects a healthy work-life balance, and building those lasting connections has been super rewarding to me. And personally, at the end of my degree, I had realized that maybe I had pushed myself way too much, and I started to lose a little bit of the appreciation that I had for working in the space. And so taking just one step to the side and seeing things from a different angle has really allowed me to feel more rejuvenated and fresh in the space. So yeah, my time with CSP has been pretty positive. But I just wanted to mention, this was a career that I didn't even know about until much, much later on in my degree. And all to say, if you don't know what you want to do after your degree, that's totally okay too, and that's totally normal. And if you do want to talk about publishing and what that career could look like, you can always message me. And I think I will leave it at that. I just wanted to say thank you to FishCAST for being such an amazing, supportive community, and for supporting my PhD, and for inviting me back for this lovely chat. Thank you.
That's amazing. Thank you for that talk, Albana. I love how you raise the fact that you're like, it's really important to be flexible. And I don't think I could have been more flexible, as you've chronicled your entire career from being a BCN at UWindsor to then behavior cognition neuroscience, to then Turtle, then to working in agriculture, to then working in, CSP, what you're doing now. I think you've been incredibly flexible, but always true to your values. So that's been your common thread and common theme throughout. So thank you for sharing that with us. And those are amazing take-home messages. So everyone just join me in again thanking Albana. That was really fantastic.
Thank you.
What we're gonna do, right now, we're gonna just switch off the recording so that we can have more freestyle.